Hello my fellow chef knife enthusiasts. Meet my cutting board of advisors. My chef and knife nerd's passion is mostly inspired by how well my knife cuts. Way more than a decade ago I found out that a Japanese knife with a sharp edge was essential. But a lot of people, including me, forget that a nice and beautiful and possibly very expensive Japanese knife needs a complementary cutting board of top quality. Like the first time I was using a Japanese knife, it didn't make any sense why I was using all those other knives before that. After using my Japanese knife on a quality cutting board, it now doesn't make any sense to me to have a really nice Japanese knife and then take it home and start cutting on a board that doesn't match the quality of your knife.
Hey, you knife snob! So what is definitely not good enough for your precious little knives?
Rule number 1. Don't cut on a glass or marble cutting board. Not just with a Japanese knife, not with any kitchen knife. Are you crazy? What do you think you're doing? It will fold over that thin edge of your knife after the first cut. Or even worse, chip it or damage it severely. There's a special place in hell for people that cut on a glass or marble cutting board.
I didn't know your atheist ass even believed in hell. Anyway, what cutting board do you suggest using then?
You really want to have a cutting board that matches and brings out the quality of your knife. Your knife and cutting board are a pair like Bonnie and Clyde,
Han Solo and Chewbacca, Batman and Robin, Bert and Ernie, Tom and Jerry, Shrek and Donkey, Wayne and Garth, Thelma and Louise,
Brian and Stewie, Frodo and Sam, Mario and Luigi, C-3PO and R2-D2, Kirk and Spock.
I could go on, but I think I've made my point. So what are, in my opinion, the most ideal cutting boards to pair with your knife? In my personal experience, these Asahi and Hasegawa cutting boards are the top dogs in the game right now. I have a few Asahi cutting boards and Hasegawa boards right here. These are the perfect pairings for your knife. When I was traveling in Japan, I did notice that in every sushi restaurant or omakase restaurants, there are only 3 types of cutting boards used: a Hasegawa or Asahi, or a Hinoki wooden cutting board. I have been using this rather big 600mm by 330mm Asahi cutting board for more than 5 years now, and I have been using this Hasegawa and smaller sized Asahi for a couple of years. So I did have quite some time to form my opinions about these cutting boards in use. This black Asahi cutting board and black Hasegawa cutting board were recently gifted to me by René Juricek, the owner of Meesterslijpers / Nice World here in Amsterdam. These were samples that he received, so I'm really grateful that he passed them on to me. Let me tell you something about the history of these Asahi cutting boards. Parker Asahi cutting boards were introduced back in 1965. These were invented before I was born. And the developments of a better cutting board has been going on ever since. However, these Asahi cutting boards are of such a high quality. I actually was in contact with a sushi chef from New York, I think, or at least from the States. He used his Asahi cutting board for more than 30 years and it's still looking as new. And yeah, I'm also really loving these Asahi cutting boards, and let me tell you why. First of all, the size and dimensions, and especially the size ratio of these cutting boards. I have this small and cramped little old Amsterdam apartment kitchen, and my countertop is not that deep. This rather big cutting board is almost twice as wide as it is deep. Even though it's only 330mm deep, it still gives me a lot of real estate to work with here, because it is 600mm wide. I use the smaller Asahi cutting boards when I'm just cutting something small. For example, every morning I make this 1.5 liter bottle of tea. I always put the juice of a whole lemon in my tea, so I'm not going to bring out this huge Asahi for cutting just 1 lemon, but this bigger size is fantastic for when I need to do bigger dinner preps at home. And it also was my main cutting board in a professional kitchen when I was still working in professional kitchens. The quality of these Asahi cutting boards is extremely high. The Asahi rubber cutting boards resemble wood actually in color, texture and softness, making them very aesthetically pleasing to the eye and therefore very useful in open kitchens or omakase settings. So this is why they are used a lot by professional chefs in Japan. The surface of the cutting board is very smooth, definitely has a texture similar to wood. It gives me great feedback on my knives, and the edge of my knife doesn't like grab into the surface, it doesn't get stuck in it. It actually bounces back a little bit. Just enough to be very gentle to the edge of my knife. It gives me a very natural cutting feel. But mind you, these are not just a solid block of rubber. In addition to rubber, wood fiber or wood powder is mixed with the rubber, making them stronger than cutting boards made of rubber alone. And it achieves that natural wooden feel. The cutting feel is definitely closer to cutting on a wooden board than cutting on a plastic board. Very durable, quite scratch proof, wear resistant, non-porous, non-absorbent, and will not crack or chip easily. It is quick to drain and dry. It won't get any odor or hardly any stains. If you wipe the board immediately after use and not let anything dry on the surface, that is. In comparison to wooden boards, these Asahi boards also don't need any oiling or any treatment. You just keep it clean and dry and you're all set. The surface is not slippery. They feel heavy and sturdy, especially the big one, of course. It's not flexible at all, so it doesn't really bend, and I like the weight. Even these smaller Asahi cutting boards have quite a nice weight to it, and this big board, the sheer weight of it keeps it more or less on its place. So these Asahi cutting boards definitely give me a great sense of stability when I'm cutting. I never worry that my cutting board is going anywhere. I think they can cut these boards in pretty much any size that you need for your home or for your commercial restaurants. They also come in different thicknesses. These smaller ones are 10 millimeters thick. My bigger one is 20 millimeters thick, which is already really nice, but I saw that they're also coming in 30 millimeter thickness and 33 millimeter thickness. The value of this Asahi cutting boards, especially when they get thicker, is really shining through, because they were made to be easily sanded down. Like a quality knife, if you sharpen them correctly and only take away the least amount of steel with every sharpening session to get that sharp edge back, your knife can last for generations. Sanding the Asahi cutting boards down doesn't only remove the possible stains on the surface, but also removes other micro scratches and cuts in the surface of the board. Each time you sand down the Asahi and remove a few microns of the surface, you basically end up with a complete new cutting board. And with this 20 millimeter thickness, it will last you a long time. I mean, I already have this for 5 years and I probably didn't even lose 1 millimeter yet. So yeah, it will last me a long time and I can make it look like brand new at any given day. So imagine how long a 30 millimeter or 33 millimeter board will last you. By getting an Asahi cutting board, you don't only buy a fantastic cutting board, you're likely to have a cutting board for life. Next to the look and feel of these Asahi cutting boards, I also love the sounds that these cutting boards make. These boards absorb the kinetic energy I'm throwing at it with my blades, and it makes a nice deep sound. The plastic cutting boards don't absorb the kinetic energy and they make a much higher pitched sound when hitting the surface. So chopping 10 kg of cucumbers made me put in earplugs sometimes. On top of all the fantastic features of these cutting boards, they're also kinder to your ears. I totally forgot to talk about this other Asahi cutting board that I have. I actually bought it together with this one, the so-called soft rubber. So it's definitely not as dense as this version of the Asahi. As you can see, it's also only 5 millimeters thick and therefore is flexible. I would definitely not recommend these soft cutting boards if you are the owner of very thin lasery type of knives. It does want to grab the edge of your more thinner Japanese knife blades. But they are actually very dense, very hard and dense. Again, very close to wood. They actually feel more like wood than rubber. Perhaps we should say these are wooden boards with a little bit of rubber in it. If you would tell me that these were made of wood or some high-tech new developed synthetic wood, I would believe you. I would believe you. I would believe you. Because these cutting boards are surprisingly hard for a synthetic rubber cutting board. Most of my knives don't even cut or catch into this board. They're only leaving minor scratches and cuts. Only my really thin laser knives, like my Shibata Kotetsu, my Kai Kobayashi and Asahi Hasegawa, are thin enough to catch in the surface a little bit if I use too much force. My point is, these cutting boards can take a beating from your workhorse as much as the next one, but they will be more forgiving and friendly to the edges of your knives. I basically can use these cutting boards exactly the same as I treated my plastic boards, and it will hold up just as well. Better yet, they will hold up better. I'm not afraid of hurting and damaging this cutting board, even when I'm like fast chopping and beating my workhorse knife on it. When rock and rolling on these cutting boards, you don't need to worry at all. And again, these cutting boards will retain your edge much better than probably all other cutting boards on the market. There's literally nothing negative I can say about these Asahi cutting boards. I really love them, and there's just no way back for me to the other cutting boards I was using before I started using these. As much as I love my Asahi cutting boards, I love my Hasegawa cutting boards as well. And especially this black one. These are the newest, latest black editions. They really make everything pop on this board because of the black background color. And it also makes it easier to see any imperfections on the ingredients on your cutting board. I use my Hasegawa boards for slicing raw proteins only, and I use my Asahis for everything else. And let me tell you why. In the West, cutting boards are usually very hard, as ingredients are cut using hard chopping method or rocking technique. The edge of a thin, hard, sharp and single bevel traditional Japanese style of knife can chip easily when using on a hard board, like the plastic cutting boards which are common in Western kitchens. Wooden cutting boards with a good touch and feedback, like end grain and inoki cutting boards, are also still used in Japan. However, wooden cutting boards are also prohibited in professional kitchens in the Netherlands and I think in most parts of the world. Wooden cutting boards are forbidden in a professional kitchen. So an ideal cutting board that is blade friendly and comparable to or even higher quality than the top quality wooden cutting boards are these Hasegawa soft cutting boards. This soft rubber is super friendly to your knives, which is extremely important to Japanese chefs that are using single bevel knives exclusively. Japanese single bevel knives are very delicate, much more delicate than the Western style double beveled knives. They are usually made of extremely hard steel, like Shirogami number 1 or 2, and they have very thin and fragile edges. The soft surface of the Hasegawa cutting boards is unparalleled by other materials used for cutting boards. In addition to its softness, it comes with a non-slippery feature due to a subtle grip on the surface. You can see that I don't have to push against the fish to let it stay where it is. The grip on the board just makes sure the fish ain't going anywhere. And that's why the Hasegawa cutting board is so nice for sushi chefs. I'm not really a sushi chef, so you probably have seen someone cut fish much nicer than I do, but I'm just showing you how this grit on the Hasegawa board performs, and yeah, it definitely works. These cutting boards give the feeling of holding ingredients firmly when slicing them. Nothing will slide or move on these cutting boards, which makes it much more safe to use for advanced Japanese cutting techniques. And because of the surface grit, sushi rice will also stick less to the board. Hasegawa soft cutting boards are loved by many sushi chefs in Japan because they were basically specifically made for them and for the tasks at hand in a sushi restaurant kitchen, and specifically catering to their knife skills and cutting techniques, slicing techniques. The biggest difference with the Asahi cutting board is that the soft rubber is way easier to damage. They cannot withstand some cutting techniques that you could do on a Asahi that well. What you can see is that these cutting boards have a wooden core. The wooden core inside of this cutting board is completely sealed in and wrapped in layers of thick plastic and the soft rubber cutting surfaces. So the wooden core will not absorb any water because there's no way the water can reach the wooden core inside. Because of the wooden core inside of these cutting boards, Hasegawas are not prone to bending and warping at all. So these will always stay nice and flat. They will not even bend or warp if you throw them through a dishwasher. Better yet, these Hasegawa cutting boards won't even warp when pouring boiling hot water over them. And this will kill all the bacteria on the cutting board surface. That is a huge unique selling point of these Hasegawa cutting boards. The wooden core inside of these cutting boards makes these cutting boards weigh a lot less than the Asahi cutting boards of the same dimension and thickness. Basically, they are in completely different weight classes. Plastic cutting boards can be very heavy, especially the big thick ones for commercial use. These Hasegawas are really lightweight, which makes them so much easier to handle. These are impressive features for a cutting board, and I'm pretty sure these are an indispensable item for a sushi chef or a serious home cook that loves to make sushi items at home. These Asahi cutting boards and Hasegawa cutting boards are providing me immense satisfaction and functionality when working with them. So, in conclusion, these Hasegawa and Asahi cutting boards are just amazing. These new black editions are maybe even prettier. This black Asahi almost looks like stone, which is really nice actually. Although I do like the wooden look and color of the other ones as well. There's just a few things that I forgot to say and I still want to mention about using these boards. I would definitely only use the Hasegawas for slicing raw proteins. You don't want to have too much contact with your knives on these boards. Although they're very soft and kind to your blades, the blades will not be so kind to the board. The Asahis can pretty much take anything. Any cutting technique is very much doable on these boards. The only thing I would say is that you don't want to leave hot cooked protein on these boards for a longer time. The hot juices coming off the meat will stain the board. If you're cutting cooked protein on these boards, staining will happen. It's gonna happen. But then again, you can completely sand it off again. And these cutting boards don't come cheap, but your knives didn't come cheap either. A knife and a board are a pair, they need to complement each other. These Hasegawa and Asahi boards just are the perfect pairing for your knives in my opinion. I'm not going back to any other cutting boards that I used before, so what can I say? Hasegawa and Asahi, top dogs. As always, thank you for watching this video. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment down below. It will help my channel a lot. Hope to catch you in the next one. Bye folks.